I am happy to see many aspirantes tonight, many distinguished aspirantes that are now community leaders and respected citizens. I must tell you that your presence and accomplishment inspire a new generation of aspirantes to do their best, to achieve their dreams, and to give their best for their communities. Do we have any aspirantes in the room? Can you stand up? I know that we have aspirantes everywhere. Senator Martinez, you too. Okay. I would like to recognize the civic, business, and community leaders that are in attendance tonight. With us, we have Congressman Luis Gutierrez, Senator Iris Martinez, Alderman Carlos Ramirez Rosa, and one of our speakers, Edwin Melendez, is also an ASPIRA national leader. With our students,
WANDA, ARIEL.
oh my God, I'm going to be in so much trouble. You have no idea how much trouble I'm going to be. Okay, I left the best for last. Alderman REBOYRAS. Yes. I'm going to be in so much trouble that I'm going to need a signing a petition to survive this. Okay, we welcome you. We're so happy to have you here, and thank you for your continued support. We also have students, ASPIRA students, that are so excited about this event tonight, because they will have the opportunity to be part of this forum and to get informed and to continue to develop their critical thinking and leadership skills, because they are committed to this community. The dreams and legacy of our founder, Dr. Antonia Pantoja, and that of the founders of ASPIRA of Illinois still drive us. The ASPIRA process of awareness, analysis, and action are alive and well, as we explore how to create forums for our young people to learn about the issues that are critical to communities and families. It is in that spirit that I am proud that we have this opportunity to bring light to the Puerto Rican debt crisis at this historic convening. This is an internationally recognized humanitarian crisis. As such, this issue requires a multitude of perspectives and experiences to develop solutions that help our families on the island and across the country. So every opinion will be valued and respected. The humanitarian crisis of Puerto Rico transcends ideological differences, ethnicities, self-interest, and communities. This crisis has a critical urgency, but also presents an enormous opportunity for us to come together to gain a better understanding of the issues at hand, to treat and support one another with the utmost respect. After all, somos hermanos. And to find ways to address it. In the same spirit that had brought us to light the need for immigration reforms for our young dreamers and their families, we must increase awareness of the debt crisis in Puerto Rico and how it affects our families locally, nationally, and on the island. Thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to an educational and productive dialogue. It is my pleasure to introduce Cristina Pacioni Sayas, co-chair of the Puerto Rican Agenda. Thank you.
I'm going to just put this down so you can see my face. Good evening. Oh, let's try that again. Good evening. It's a Friday night. You all are making a sacrifice being here tonight. So let's get excited about it. As she mentioned, my name is Cristina Pacioni Sayas. I am the co-chair of the Puerto Rican Agenda. And on behalf of the Puerto Rican Agenda, we thank you for joining us tonight for a very important public policy discussion on 3 critical issues with respect to the Puerto Rican diaspora. The first, as mentioned before, is the economic crisis facing the island of Puerto Rico. The second is the human rights campaign to release Oscar López Rivera, the longest standing political prisoner. Yes. In the history of relations between the United States and Latin America. And the third is a very exciting initiative, the formation of a national Puerto Rican agenda. So, yes, we're super excited about that. So a little bit about us. The Puerto Rican Agenda is an unincorporated organization of local Puerto Rican leaders that seek to influence policy for the advancement of the Puerto Rican community in Chicago. And we are pleased to co-host this event with ASPIRA, one of our community's longest standing organizations, founded 55 years ago with the mission to empower the Puerto Rican and Latino community through advocacy and the education and leadership of its youth. So one thing I want to underscore is that tonight's public policy discussion should be understood in the following context. First is the Puerto Rican diaspora is currently coming together to play a critical role to influence solutions for the issues that I just mentioned. Specifically, there is a nationwide advocacy effort around the Puerto Rican fiscal crisis and the issue of human rights with Oscar. In fact, tonight is the first time Puerto Rican elected leadership, along with leaders from the local Puerto Rican community, are publicly coming together to discuss these concerns in the context of the 2016 presidential election. So, and an example actually of our work across the states and collaborating with community leaders is that we have representatives tonight from several other states, from New York, New Jersey, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Actually, if you guys can stand up, our guests, oh, Ohio, I'm sorry. If you guys can stand up, we're really grateful that you were able to join us this evening as well. It's really an example. Texas too is here. Okay, we've got quite a few. And as I mentioned, this presidential election is very critical, and we really have a grand opportunity to put these issues on the map and to really do something for our community. So as you take in this discussion, we invite you to explore opportunities for civic engagement, both locally and nationally, especially as it relates to this particular election. And this, not only is it an opportunity for us to come together, and it's never really happened before at this kind of scale, we have to do this for Puerto Rico because Puerto Rico has done so much for us. We have so many family members that are suffering. We are very proud of our history and our legacy, and so now it's up to us to continue that legacy. So I'm going to give you 3 things to think about as we're going through this discussion in terms of how you can get involved. The first is the Puerto Rican Agenda meets every first Saturday of the month, but we won't be meeting tomorrow morning because we're here tonight. So we invite you to join us, and if you signed in at the front, we will be, sharing information about future meetings. The second is El Centro de los Estudios Puertorriqueños in New York is hosting a summit in April. I believe there's some information about that in your folders, and it's in New York City. And the third is there's opportunity to inform the dialogue during the Democratic National Convention and the Republican National Convention, both taking place in July. The DNC is going to be in Philadelphia, the RNC is going to be in Cleveland, and so there'll be some opportunities to mobilize and be a part of that process. So once again, we are so delighted that you can join us tonight, and we look forward to working together with you on behalf of our community. And so I'm really pleased to kind of set the tone for the conversation. We have a special presentation by Dr. Edwin Melendez. He's a professor of urban affairs and planning at Hunter College and the director of the Center for Puerto Rican Studies. He's conducted considerable research in the areas of Latino studies, economic development, labor markets, and poverty. Dr. Melendez joined us last April for the Puerto Rican Agenda meeting. sharing his latest research on recent changes in settlement patterns among Puerto Ricans on the mainland, and we are pleased to bring him back to provide some additional context for the discussion tonight. So without further ado, can you please help me welcoming Dr. Menendez?
Okay, the technology.
Yeah, it's not ready to go. I think I can do this without PowerPoint. It's better with PowerPoint. Well, anyways. No, it's not that. I think. Okay. Someone else. I apologize for this. Well, I have beautiful graphics I want to show off, okay? I'm sorry. Imagine you're a professor without a... There we go. You got a PowerPoint. You got a huge... So, there we go. Now we're rolling. Thank you very much. I apologize for the delay here. In any case, it's my great pleasure to be here tonight. I really want to thank the organizers, Fernando Grillo, Jose López, my colleagues, distinguished guest, Luis Gutierrez, and Iris Martinez, our very senator, distinguished leaders from ASPIRA here. So it's my great pleasure to be back in Chicago talking about what's happening in Puerto Rico. So tonight, I just want to break it down a little bit for you. Those of you who are not completely aware of what's going on in Puerto Rico, I think we are really in a very historical moment, what's happening both in Puerto Rico and in the U.S. And the way the diaspora is reacting, I think is unprecedented in our history in the United States, and I'm going to explain a little bit of why is that. So I'm going to go a little bit explaining the crisis in Puerto Rico, and then talking about the consequences for the diaspora, for Puerto Ricans in the U.S., and what it means to us, and why that is giving us impetus to organize ourselves here in the United States to be able to help Puerto Rico. So the first thing we need to know about what's happening in Puerto Rico is that it is a humanitarian crisis, and you can measure that in two straightforward ways. Okay, the first one is exactly what's happening in Puerto Rico. As you know, there are a lot of foreclosures. People are talking about not having supplies in hospitals. There are layoffs. There are all kinds of indicators of what's happening to the population in Puerto Rico who are paying the price for this. But it's also impacting our communities in the United States because there is a great flow of Puerto Ricans coming to the States, and sometimes they don't have all the conditions to engage and be productive citizens here in the United States. So in any case, we have an unprecedented wave of migration. I'm going to try to explain with more graphics and numbers what that is. But in any case, the unfortunate thing, the reality is that we're not nearly the bottom. We're still going downhill, and we can do a lot of things to prevent that from reaching even worse proportions. So first we need to understand what happened in Puerto Rico, and I call it a perfect storm, because U.S. policies created a tax break for American investors in Puerto Rico. It's called 936, and 936 was eliminated in 1996, phased out for 10 years. So everything that began at that moment when they eliminated that policy is now having the worst consequences that we could have imagined at the time. But also, once the liquidity that those companies brought to Puerto Rico was eliminated, okay, the financial system in Puerto Rico sort of collapsed. So years before, 2 years at least before the financial crisis in the United States, we had an economic crisis triggering in Puerto Rico. And then the U.S. Congress, who actually has a lot to do, with what happens in the island, did not react fast enough. So let's take one of each one of those factors briefly. So the 936, you can see that when they eliminated the section in 1996, the prior decade, on average, you were creating about 30,000 jobs a year. But once the 936 were started to phase out, that declined to about 8,000 jobs a year. And then when they eliminated, finally in 2006, since then, we have lost an average of 30,000 jobs a year just in manufacturing as a result of the elimination of the 936. A total loss of 247 jobs. Now, keep in mind that the average salary for those jobs is about $60,000 a year, when the average worker in Puerto Rico receives less than $30,000. Okay, so it's a big loss for the economy. Then you have that the debt started growing. As the revenues decreased in Puerto Rico, the deficit started increasing. That's what that graphic is showing. The GDP was negative, the crisis started, and then the government had to borrow more and more to finance the operations. But guess what? This graphic is very telling. This is not just this government problem. If you look back, the green bar are the public corporations, the little yellow in the middle are municipalities, and then the government, the Commonwealth, are the bottom orange. But look at that graphic. All the governors, each one of those, every 4 years, right, we elect a new government. When you look at those bars, every governor prior to the existing governor is responsible for that debt, okay? It's accumulation. Pointing fingers as to who's to blame is not going to get us too far. But the more interesting thing is that because we are in junk bond territory, there is no value to the debt that Puerto Rico has access to. Look, the final administration, the most recent administration, cannot borrow any money. So the public corporations have not increased debt. So that's what we are. So in response to that, the government started cutting jobs, okay? Starting saving monies whatever they could to try to balance the budget in Puerto Rico. They have done a lot of measures that will be unthinkable here in any one state in the country. But that was not enough to create a little bit of economic development in the island. What's happening now is that we have a very dismal liquidity situation. You don't have tax rebates going back to the public. Anything that you're not paying suppliers. The government of Puerto Rico is getting money from pension funds to pay current obligations. Okay, it's a disaster what's happening with the finances of the island. The liquidity is almost inexistent. So in that context, we need to understand why congressional response is so important. Okay. If there is no response from Congress, and I'm going to get in a minute into what is it that they're asking, and I'm sure Congressman Gutierrez is going to expand on that. It's going to really expand on that. So, the fight right now is that we need some kind of territorial bankruptcy to protect the Commonwealth and the corporations from the debt that they have to pay. This year, that debt is going to be about $2 billion. There's no liquidity in the government to keep that pace of payment. They have defaulted already in some of them, and the Obama administration put a simple plan in place. I don't think that we're going to get much out of the Republican-controlled Congress this time, but at least the whole question of the bankruptcy needs to be resolved. The Obama plan also called for earned income tax credit, extension of earned income tax credit, and the child tax credit to Puerto Rico. They also called for some measures that the administration can take to replace funding for the Obamacare that is in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is facing now, at the end of the summer, they're going to run out for Medicare and other appropriations that were made as a block grant way back when Obamacare was approved in 2010. Okay, that needs to be replenished, or the liquidity for the health system in Puerto Rico is going to disappear. Imagine that subsidy is about $1.2 billion a year, $1.7 billion a year, depending on how you look at the subsidy. And beginning at the end of this year, they're going to run out of those monies. dropping the available funding for supporting all that insurance that benefits low-income people to about $400 million a year. So it's a big cut. It's called the Medicare cliff. And I think that's just one example of what executive action, congressional action need to be done, need to do to subsidize, to mitigate the crisis in Puerto Rico. So some of the indicators are breathtaking. 45% of the people in Puerto Rico are living in poverty. They receive subsidies, food stamps and so forth at rates that are much higher than in any other jurisdiction in the United States. Unemployment is about 14% right now, and the per capita income keeps stalling compared to other parts of the United States. So in any case, it is a humanitarian crisis. It's not just a financial crisis, and we need to pay attention to that. But having said all of this, what does it matter to you here in the States? What does it matter yes, it matters to our families in Puerto Rico, but does it matter really to you in the United States? And the answer is that because of that, we had an unprecedented migration to the U.S. All our communities are receiving newcomers. So some places more than others. Florida just went to reach about 1 million Puerto Ricans, up to about 600,000 way back in the early 2000s. So it's an incredible, unprecedented migration that is affecting all our communities. It's estimated that it's over 400,000, and just last year, there is an indicator, which is the net movement of passengers, that last year almost doubled from the high 40s and 50s to about 83,000. So for those of you who say, well, there was a greater migration way back in the 50s of Puerto Ricans, this graphic is illustrative for you of how those two things compare. Look at obviously we have more information now than we had before, but the point of this graphic is that the current migration is extremely higher. It hasn't ended, right, compared to what it was in the 50s. So that's sort of a historical perspective of this. We also can talk about what motivates people to leave Puerto Rico. And the answer is most people respond that is because they are looking for a job. So, so the point of this is that Puerto Ricans should have the right to raise their children, keep their families in Puerto Rico if they choose to do that. They don't have that choice now. A lot of young families are migrating. Right now, the Puerto Rico is being depopulated, and this graphic tells the biggest story, okay? If you look at 2005, 2006, there were about equal number of Puerto Ricans in the island as there were in the United States. Look at the blue graphic, which is Puerto Ricans in the U.S. So right now, there are about 3.4 million Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico and 5.2 million in the United States. It's a swing of about 1.8 million Puerto Ricans. So it's not just that we are more in the States, it's that we have we have average, we are younger, we have families that are having, children in the States, so the gap between Puerto Ricans in the U.S. and Puerto Rico is going to continue. I'm running a little bit out of time, so let me just show you a few graphics. This shows you the migration of Puerto Rico. It shows that it's everywhere. It's primarily to Florida. Pennsylvania is the second state. And those are two very important points because those two happens to be swing states where Puerto Ricans, if they vote and they're mobilized, could make a big difference. And the other important, interesting point is the New South is growing fast. The other point that is important to understand is that it's not just Puerto Ricans coming from Puerto Rico. These are the rates of Puerto Ricans that move from one state to the other every year. The purple bar on top is Puerto Ricans in the United States, higher than blacks, higher than whites, higher than Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico, higher than anyone else. And the point of that is that Puerto Ricans are a very resilient population. We move where the jobs are. It's not just from Puerto Rico to the U.S. It's all over the United States. And that's a very important point to understand. When people talk about Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico, they don't want to work, they don't want to do this, or Puerto Ricans in the States, all the data that we have suggests the contrary. Puerto Ricans are very attached to the labor force, and they travel, and what this migration flows show is that it's not only they're going to Florida, it's also that they move to the old enclave. So they go all over the country. The graphic that I'm showing now, it tells you the growth. The green bar is 2014, is the latest news, the latest data that we have, and it's showing that Puerto Ricans are growing all over the country. So this great migration, okay, it's important to understand it as Puerto Ricans being a resilient population, resilient people. We attach to jobs, we seek jobs. So in response to the crisis in Puerto Rico, we travel, we come here, and the question is, what can we do now? We have families in Puerto Rico that need our help, our support, and I think we're ready to do that. There is a coalition going at the national level. You're going to have other people who are going to explain some of that. They're going to explain more of that. But the point is that Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico are one people. We need to figure out a way to support them. And I think it's time that we unite ourselves in one voice to affect what's happening in Congress. We have great fighters in Congress, but we need an inside-outside strategy. Just them inside doing their thing is not enough. We need to be outside trying to respond to this crisis as one people, as one voice. And with that thought, I think we can all help prevent the worsening of what's happening to our people, both there and here. So thank you very much. I don't know what to do with that.
Let's give him an applause. That was an excellent presentation. Excellent. It is my honor to introduce someone that needs no introduction in our community and beyond, Congressman Luis Gutierrez. I was certainly, if I was a student, I must confess that I was certainly given the easiest homework tonight. Throughout his 12 years in terms in office, we have witnessed Congressman Gutierrez's passionate and articulate defense of our families and communities. He is the senior member of the Illinois delegation in the U.S. House of Representatives and represents the constituents of the Illinois 4th District since 1992. We know that they vote for him, but he actually represents not only the 4th District, but all Latino and immigrant communities. Congressman Gutierrez has been a leader of many major legislative debates on immigration reform and immigration issues for more than a dozen years, the Puerto Rican debt crisis, and many issues of great importance and relevance in our communities. He played an instrumental role in advocating for executive action by President Obama to provide deportation relief to certain long-term undocumented immigrants and their families. We're pleased to see Congressman Gutierrez again leading a call for action for a humanitarian and just solution to the Puerto Rican debt crisis, and are thankful to his leadership. And it is my pleasure to introduce him tonight so we can learn more about the issue at hand, but also because our students are here, and for our youth, they have the opportunity to meet him and be inspired for what can be possible in their own lives. So please welcome Congressman Gutierrez.
Thank you, Wanda. Thank you. Let's give La Doctora another round of applause. This is beautiful. Fernando, thank you for the wonderful job you're doing, heading up ASPIRA. you guys have really turned it around. I mean, you've improved it. You've just made it such a wonderful institution, a growing, more wonderful institution. I want to then just go very quickly to Edie's. Not a year yet. In May? But what a wonderful, right, contribution he has made in the last year to the city of Chicago. And I want to say to Dr. Edwin Melendez, right? Doctor, you heard his presentation. He came all the way here. But more than that, he's organizing all over the United States. And he's bringing us all together the 22nd and the 23rd to New York, where on the 22nd, we're all going to get back together as a Puerto Rican community from all over. And we're going to raise the very issues that Christina talked to us about earlier in the day. And we're going to all work together from Ohio, from New Jersey, from Connecticut, and yes, from Chicago. And then the next morning, we're going to finally put together the National Coalition of Puerto Rican Elected Officials, or whatever Iris wants to call it. But we're going to put together, because we don't have a body. We have the National Association of Latino Elected Official, we got Hispanic this, you know, we got, that's okay, Latino this, Hispanic, you know, it's okay to have something named Puerto Rican too. Especially at this particular time. And so we're gonna go, and you know, if you build it, people will come. I want to say that this is a particularly critical time. When my mom and my dad came here in 1952, I can't imagine how it was for them. I just can't imagine how it was for them. But the other day I was on a flight, and the flight was from San Juan. And I was trying to get back to Washington, D.C., and the quickest way was to go to Boston. Doc. Y sentado al lado mío había un joven. Un joven de Peñuelas, Puerto Rico. Y rápidamente me di cuenta que él nunca había salido de Peñuela en su vida. Porque we were 35,000 feet, and he said, ya el avión, ya empezamos. No, and I told him, and then he said to me, mira, y cobran por el café y la Coca-Cola. And I had to tell you, I know we laughed, but I felt so sad. Because it's, why did he have to leave? You know, if he doesn't know the fundamentals of an airplane, imagine what a shock it's going to be to him to take him out of his beautiful. He's supposed to be in Peñuelas. That's what comes naturally to him. And we should allow people to live in an environment that comes naturally to them. And not force them like we did my mom and my dad. Because let's understand something. My mom and my dad came here as part of an economic structure that was designed for my mom and my dad to come here. It's part of that escape valve. Well, we know how to keep the Puerto Rican economy. Let's just get rid of 1 million Puerto Ricans. And that was something that was planned. But they're coming today. Not like that young kid from Peñuela. You know who's coming today? Doctors, lawyers, architects, engineers, teachers. My mom and dad, they came porque no le quedaba remedio. It was 1950, it was after World War II, y que le quedaba. But you know what? When my mom and dad came, there was no pancarta que decía, bienvenido, qué buena idea que hayan llegado. Pero nosotros estamos aquí hoy para decirle a todos esos puertorriqueños que tienen que venir de esa isla, bienvenido, que nosotros estamos aquí para protegerlos a ustedes. Que la historia no se va a repetir. We're not going to let history simply repeat itself. And one of the things I learned from Dr. Edwin, think about this. He taught me in Orlando. More Puerto Ricans retire, having been born in Puerto Rico and retire to the United States, than leave the United States to retire to Puerto Rico. Eso es absurdo. Que la gente trabajan toda su vida y después se van al exilio después de haber trabajado. No debe de ser como hizo mi mamá y mi papá, que siempre tenían esperanza. ¿Qué decía mi mamá cuando había una tormenta de nieve? esta no es mi tierra. Cuando estaban los pandilleros en la esquina y había que pasar por ahí y daban miedo, esto no es mi tierra. ¿Ah? Así decía. Cuando nos entraron a nuestra casa y nos cogieron el arroz y café y destruyeron todas las casas buscando cualquier cosa de valor que nosotros teníamos, y mi mamá llegó conmigo, yo me recuerdo de niño, y nos habían robado todo. Mi mamá decía, esto no es mi tierra. Pues esa es nuestra tierra, Puerto Rico. Y nosotros tenemos que defenderla. Y decirle a la gente que hay que respetarla también. So it's very, very different. It's very, very different. I say to a lot of people, when my mom and my dad and a million other Puerto Ricans came to the United States, there was nobody to raise their voice in the Congress of the United States. Today, someone exists. Many of us exist in the Congress of the United States. And we must respond to that great tradition. You know what I think is one of the things, if I was a sociologist, here's the premise I'd like to prove. Because I think it'd be easy to prove. If you see unfairness, if you see injustice, if you see prejudice, if you see any wrongful conduct, and you lift your voice up to denounce it and fight against it, you must be Puerto Rican. Because I think it is who we are. So it shouldn't surprise people when I went to the Congress of the United States and I saw people who had just recently arrived, like my mom and my dad. Sí, nuestros padres tenían papeles, and I know sometimes the Puerto Ricans get a little frustrated, right? Did you come here with papers in Puerto Rico? I know you get a little frustrated. I know sometimes it takes you out. But it really shouldn't. Because you know what that's telling us? That we're all really one community. So when someone says that everyone from Mexico is a murderer, a rapist, and a drug dealer, I suggest that you read the papers in New York in 1950 to see what they wrote about Puerto Ricans. And I suggest that the next time somebody comes and asks you, ¿y tú tienes papeles? Es porque tú te ves idéntico a esa gente. Porque tú te ves idéntico a esa gente. Y esa gente son tu hermano. In my house, my daughter, you know, Omaira, you can't be more Puerto Rican than Omaira. Everybody knows my daughter, Omaira. Tiene ese pelo rizo tan bello. Huh? And she just loves her salsa, and she loves everything about being Puerto Rican. And she's dynamite. And she married a young man named Ecliserio Figueroa. Tú sabes que ese muchacho no vino de Puerto Rico. No, porque yo he caminado por Utuado, Hilares y Jayuya, allá por las montañas, yo no me he conocido un Ecliserio. Ese vino de México. Do you know what the wonderful thing is? To listen to my 12-year-old grandson, El Hijo. You know what he says? He said, Grandpa, in this arm, I feel Puerto Rican. In this one, I feel Mexican. And right here, I feel 100% American. You know, it's interesting to listen to children. Just listen to them. And you know what? To him, it's natural, right? That his dad. He walked up to President Obama when President came a couple of years ago. And Carlos, my little 12-year-old, he walks up to the president and he says, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you because now I have tias and tios that can stay. That's how he sees it. He sees them as his family. And he sees the tragedy of Puerto Rico as something that's important to him too. Que vamos a celebrar que somos uno. No importa si somos dominicanos, colombianos. No importa si venimos de Ecuador o de El Salvador o de Puerto Rico o de Cuba. La verdad que somos uno. Pero nosotros tenemos una responsabilidad muy particular y eso es con la isla de Puerto Rico. So I'm going to continue to champion the cause, but I'm also going to raise my voice for Puerto Rico. I want to share with you that everybody wants to talk about the debt of Puerto Rico. Lo que deben los puertorriqueños. ¿Y por qué no se habla de lo que se les debe a los puertorriqueños? Porque nunca se habla de eso. ¿Sabe? La Junta está diseñada para pagarle a los bonistas. ¿Y cuándo se va a hacer la Junta para pagarle la deuda a Puerto Rico? 12% de la mejor tierra de Puerto Rico no la pagaron y la tomaron los americanos para hacer bases militares. Yo no me recuerdo cuando recibimos la renta cada mes por eso. Nos destruyeron a Culebra y Vieques, todavía no la han limpiado y no nos han pagado. ¿Y el costo de eso? A los miles de viequenses que hoy sufren de cáncer. ¿Y cuándo cuándo va a haber justicia? ¿Cuándo va a haber justicia para eso? Nosotros hemos pagado, I make this very clear to you so that you understand, billions of dollars have left the pocketbooks of Puerto Ricans because the Congress of the United States wants the people of Puerto Rico that has half the per capita income of the poorest of the 50 states to subsidize the U.S. Merchant Marines to the tune of billions of dollars. When are we going to take that into account? When? No, we never take that into account. And I got to tell you, like Oscar López and so many others who were called to defend the nation and serve in the armed forces of the United States, ¿cuál es el costo de eso? When is when they're going to be parity? I'm happy that we all understand. In Puerto Rico, when you pay, you all get your FICA, your Medicare and your Social Security, you get that out of your check. I want you to know, in Puerto Rico, te cobran lo mismo en Medicare y te mandan la mitad del dinero que lo que te mandan aquí en Illinois. When is that going to get corrected? The decades. And let me say another thing. No han destruido nuestra agricultura en Puerto Rico. No la han destruido de dos maneras. Número uno, porque nunca hay incentivo a trabajar la tierra. Nunca ha habido. ¿Cómo tú vas a vivir en una isla tropical y tú vas a la tienda a comprar China? A comprar piña que viene importado a una isla tropical? Eso no tiene sentido. Porque nunca nos han incentivado a producir y crear para que nosotros podamos vivir y sostenernos lo que es natural a una isla tropical. Si lo hacen, nosotros tendríamos un Puerto Rico mucho mejor. When are we going to incentivize work? I sit there in the committee every day. You know what they try to do? They try to humiliate us. Just think about it. I sit in a committee with a dozen congressmen talking about the fiscal mismanagement of the people on the island of Puerto Rico. Yeah, you guys ran up an $18 trillion debt, and you want to now pass judgment of the people of island Puerto Rico when you never gave them. No, and understand that you incurred that $18 trillion, and you were in charge of your destiny. Nosotros, we never were in charge. The first thing you read, I want you to be clear, I want everybody to understand that there is a responsibility that not only rests on the people of Puerto Rico. The first thing I did when I read in there, it says, the plenary powers over Puerto Rico rest in the Congress of the United States under the territorial clause. I didn't say that. The Republican majority in the House of Representatives said that. The Supreme Court of the United States says Puerto Rico belongs to, but isn't a part of the United States. I didn't say that. The Supreme Court of the United States said that. You know, when you say something like that, and there are millions of human beings, with that comes an extreme responsibility. Que nosotros le pertenecemos, pero que no somos parte. Eso es el colonialismo. And here's the other thing. How destructive colonialism is to the way people think, to the destructive nature it has on a mind. A mind that then thinks, I'm not capable. I'm not worthy. I'm not smart enough. I can't do this. Instead of creating a sense that yes, we can. I mean, I look at my little island and everybody says, oh, and this isn't just about 3.5 million Puerto Rican citizens of the United States. I was watching the fight last night. That Verdejo, the new Puerto Rican champion, he was in Madison Square Garden. And you see how they introduced them? From Puerto Rico. You ever see a Puerto Rican boxer introduced from the United States? No, they always introduce them. They're Puerto Rico. And they're Puerto Rican talent. And the Puerto Rican talent that comes there. And they always distinguish between the Puerto Ricans and the other boxers. Now I just want you to think what we do on in that boxing ring. You know what? We do that in science. We do that in engineering. We do that in every aspect of life. So when I went before the Congress, I said, free Puerto Rico. I mean, have a tropical island. Have you ever seen the wind stop blowing up the east coast of the island of Puerto Rico. Have you ever? You ever been to Fajardo? No, déjame decirlo bien, Fajardo, porque así me enseñó mi nieto. Me dice, no puede tumbar la R. Grandpa. That's un puertorriqueñismo. We have to pronounce the R. But I say that to you because when are we going to be given the ability to harvest that wind that blows every day for free? Mm-hmm. That sun that comes up every morning. When are we going to harvest? Instead of having one of the most expensive systems anywhere on the planet. Do you know when you turn on your air conditioner in Chicago and you compare it to that one in Puerto Rico, you're paying 3 times as much? ¿Por qué? Because we're not using our natural resources. Because in Puerto Rico, we produce what we don't consume and we consume what we don't produce. It's time within the context of what we're doing to say you also share a responsibility. A control board? Y entonces, I love Obama, I love everybody at the Treasury Department, but I gotta tell you, ¿quién nos mandaron con la Junta de Control? Do you know who they changed? I want you to Google him when you leave. Antonio Weiss. I want you to Google him. Antonio Weiss. You know what Antonio Weiss did before he went to go work for the Obama administration? He was working for one of the hedge funds, making tens of millions of dollars a year. And now he's the one that's coming before the Congress to tell us that maybe we just need a control board so that the markets can have confidence in that the people of Puerto Rico are going to pay their debts after years of mismanagement. No, mira, I didn't go to Congress to vote for a control board that's going to pay the hedge funds on Washington, D.C., so that they can make a profit off the people of Puerto Rico. We're going to keep the police on the street. We're going to keep the doctors in the hospitals. We're going to keep the teachers in the classroom for the people of Puerto Rico. We're not going to allow them to simply run. So I came here this evening to say to you, all of these things are important to us as who we are. Lastly, I want to talk a moment about Oscar.
Yeah.
Because the future finances of Puerto Rico, important. It's important. Healthcare, important. Putting all the Puerto Rican elected officials, important. All of those things are important. But you know what? Si las próximas Navidades no está Oscar con nosotros, yo me sentiría como un fracaso. Y déjame decirle a ustedes, se los digo, Oscar no está con nosotros en las Navidades, yo no veo el camino. Este es el momento. Este es el momento. Como nos dijo el doctor Edwin Meléndez, ¿dónde están los puertorriqueños? Casi 1 millón de ellos en Florida. ¿Tú sabes cómo se ganan las elecciones aquí para presidente de los Estados Unidos? En Florida. Y nosotros tenemos que organizar a esos puertorriqueños en Florida y decirle, mire, levanten su voz y cuando vienen los políticos por ahí, dile, sí, yo quiero cuidado médico, sí, yo quiero más educación, sí, yo quiero más calle segura, pero también quiero que ver a Oscar López Rivera caminar las calles de mi pueblo también de nuevo. I want to see that too, because that's important. And I just want everybody to think a moment. I've been talking to Jose, and I'm saying this not in the context to brag about me, but please put it in the context of the pride I feel about the moment and how important Puerto Ricans feel about this moment. So please understand the context. I gave that speech that they put for you and 998,000. It's probably over 1 million views tonight. But that doesn't speak about me. That speaks about the importance of the issue. ¿Cuándo ustedes se imaginaban que un congresista iba a ir ante el pleno del Congreso de los Estados Unidos y decir Free Puerto Rico y que 1 millón de puertorriqueños iban a ir a verlo? That doesn't happen. And the reason I bring it up today, and I want to make sure that I tell everybody, it wasn't in the context of the status. No, just free it. Let it be able to give incentives to people. Let it be able to harness its wind and its sun. Let it be able to harness the beauty of its land and its agriculture, right? Don't keep making the Merchant Marine the most expensive ships in the world. Let us free us. But ustedes siguen, dándonos menos y menos posibilidades de tener éxito. Just free us. So that was the context in which I said it. Not in the context of a status question. And so 1 million Puerto Ricans. I say that if 1 million Puerto Ricans are going to tune in to watch a member of Congress talk about Puerto Rico, think how many of them will tune in if we talk about Oscar López Rivera. Think about, one moment, how many of us have our coffee and it costs us $3, $4, $5? We'll have a drink, we go to a nightclub, it's like $10. No, we download, 5 canciones, $6 on our credit card so we can think about all of the things, right? Oh, let me get that new movie. Oh, it's $5.99. I want to get it. Here, Comcast. Let me send you $5.99 so I can say, you know what I'm saying. You know what? Oscar López Rivera doesn't get to do any of those things. Doesn't get to go out and have coffee. Doesn't get to download. Doesn't get to watch the movie. He's in a cell. And all of us are watching movies, downloading iTunes, having our coffee, and having our drinks. And I say that if we put the site together, we will raise millions of dollars so that we can raise the awareness that we need by simply setting aside a copy or an iTunes. People are ready. I bet you're ready to do it. We just need to create the space in our social media for people to come. And I keep saying, if you build it, they will come. So I'm going to end with this. We're going, because Edwin Melendez has created a wonderful venue for us in New York with all of the Puerto Ricans from all over the United States. And we're going to raise all of the issues. But I want to just give you a little heads up. I say we all go and have a freedom concert in Washington, D.C. by the tens of thousands of Puerto Ricans this September. Y que Obama no escuche. I want to talk to you more about that. But I want you to start thinking movilización, movilización y movilización. And this Christmas, you know, I'm going to have the best president in the world. I'm going to have one of my brothers who I love so much, your brother who you love so much, being able to walk among us as a free man. So free Puerto Rico. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those amazing and inspiring remarks. At this point, we would like to give our electeds an opportunity to kind of reflect on the Congressman's remarks, and I'd like to actually pass the mic to Senator Martinez to start.
First and foremost, buenas noches a todos. Buenas noches. I'm very happy to be here. You know, I hate to follow Luis. I really do. But let me just say that if I am today where I am today, it's because my first start in politics was in Luis's office as his assistant 20-something years ago. 20-something years ago. Pero let me just say real quickly, because I think it's important that we hear from you. I am 100% moving forward with this. I intend to also utilize the Democratic National Committee. As the chairman of the Hispanic Caucus, I'm going to utilize that platform to make sure that we get heard on what's going on and that Oscar is part of the conversation at the DNC. So that's my commitment. And lastly, you know what? There's a situation, la crisis en Puerto Rico está realmente fatal en el sentido de que la gente se está yéndose de la isla. They're all migrating to Florida. That's okay, because I like Florida. I mean, it's nice. Pero they should not be leaving Puerto Rico to look for jobs. We have to work together, and I'm looking forward to that meeting in Nueva York, because I think that's going to be a very powerful message bringing together all the Puerto Ricans electeds all across the United States together, in Nueva York, and starting the movement that we really need, that is long overdue. So I am ready for the fight. Gracias.
Hola, yo me llamo Carlos Rosa, and I'm here tonight because my father was Puerto Rican, and his grandfather was Puerto Rican, and because I had the very good luck in my life to be friends with Jessica Gutierrez, the daughter of Congressman Gutierrez, I know that they arrived to the island of Puerto Rico, to the town of San Sebastián, in 1600. See, the congressman's daughter is very smart. She went to the Newberry Library, did some research, and found out that the Rosa family arrived to the town of San Sebastián as indentured servants from Spain. And they got there and they cut sugarcane. And they cut sugarcane for 350 years. So algunas veces cuando se me suban los humos, as they say, because people say, oh, you're an alderman. I remember your father cut sugarcane, your grandfather cut sugarcane, and his great-grandfather cut sugarcane for 350 years. And, I love my father with all my heart and soul, but 3 years ago when I was in Puerto Rico with him visiting San Sebastián, I disagreed with him then, and Papi, if you're listening in heaven, I'm going to have to disagree with you now. When we were in the area right by where he grew up, there was a Walgreens and there was a KFC. And I said, this is horrible. I said, this is absolutely horrible. And he said, why? And I said, because they're here exploiting the people of Puerto Rico. And he said, no, son, they're creating jobs. And I think that that's a great travesty of capitalism and of this economic system, that it forces us to be happy for scraps. And so here is a man that cut sugarcane, who worked all his life, who came from a working family, that worked years cutting sugarcane to create wealth for other people. And here he is happy that there are these multinational corporations that poison our bodies, right? KFC ain't good for you, let me tell you something. I love it, but it's not, okay? Here he is happy that there are these corporations on the island, right, that are poisoning our people and then taking that wealth and putting it someplace else. And so what has that system done now to the island of Puerto Rico? One, it causes this debt crisis. And then two, now it's forcing us to ask for the right to declare bankruptcy. Think about that. One of the demands at this moment in time is that the island of Puerto Rico have the right to declare bankruptcy. And so as a member of the Puerto Rican diaspora, right, as a Boricua, my question is, how will we transform that, right? How will we be prophetic in our advocacy and say, no, we reject this notion that the island of Puerto Rico has to pay this debt, right? Because you have exploited us for hundreds of years. Because the wealth that you have taken from that island is wealth that we, the workers, the ones that cut sugarcane for 350 years, created. And so that's really my stance right now, is a strong belief that as Puerto Ricans, we need to reimagine what it is, right, to advocate in the face of this economic crisis. And I think that we should say no to paying that debt. Because the banks don't need that money, right? They don't need that money. But the island of Puerto Rico needs hospitals and needs public schools. And to connect it back to the fight that's here in Chicago, one of the things that teachers have said here in Chicago is that the Chicago public schools, which face a similar crisis, is broke on purpose. Right? And I say that Puerto Rico is also broke on purpose, right? The bankers got us into the situation, and we shouldn't pay or give in to their demands because it will hurt the people.
That was pretty good. The youngest city council member in Chicago, we're proud of him. Yeah. But, when the congressman spoke, it's like it opens up your heart a little bit and it makes you think back. Cuando nuestros padres vinieron aquí a Chicago. And I would bet that if my father were here with us today, he would say, I want to lead that fight. And don Ramón. Y papi y mami llegaron aquí en 1950 también, buscando mejor para ellos y su familia. y luego nacimos nosotros, y estamos aquí. Y tenemos que seguir los pasos de nuestros congresistas para mejorar lo que hay, el crisis de la isla, Puerto Rico. Nos merecemos eso. Nos merecemos eso. And the important thing is that our youth needs to understand that. Yo me recuerdo que mi suegro me dijo una vez a mí, me dio una paliza también, pero no puedo hablar de eso. Pues yo era un nene bueno. Me dice Ariel, hay un refrán que dice, haz producir tu tierra y comparte con tu hermano. Esas palabras son fuertes y yo pienso que tenemos que seguir ese movimiento porque eso no existe hoy y tenemos que presentarlo de nuevo. Tenemos que producir esa tierra y compartir con nuestros hermanos que están en la isla, los hermanos que están aquí en Estados Unidos, y tenemos que ir para adelante. Porque Puerto Rico se lo merece. No hay excusa. Es un desastre, tenemos que arreglar eso. Gracias.
Buenas noches. Good evening. On behalf of the Board of Directors of ASPIRA, I want to thank you all for coming this evening. Quiero darle las gracias por haber estado presente esta noche. Creo que esto ha sido una reunión hasta histórica para nuestra comunidad aquí en Chicago. Esta noche hemos abierto nuestras puertas. Aquí en ASPIRA hemos colaborado con nuestros hermanos en el Centro Cultural y en las diferentes organizaciones que se han unido con nosotros. Y de verdad que ha sido una noche de mucha información, una noche de participación. Le agradecemos al congresista, a nuestros líderes, al liderato de ASPIRA y todos nuestros alumnos que están aquí presentes. Creo que esto es un empiece de un diálogo que queremos continuar en los próximos meses, en los próximos años, y en los próximos meses hay mucho que hacer. Y Edwin, según nos unimos al programa de la Agenda Nacional Puertorriqueña y trabajamos juntos para el bienestar de nuestra comunidad aquí y el bienestar de nuestros hermanos latinoamericanos aquí también. Vayamos a Nueva York, participemos en el proceso. Algo que ha destacado ASPIRA por casi 50 años es la participación en la comunidad. Nosotros decimos civic engagement. Es extremadamente importante que nuestros jóvenes entiendan que ellos tienen una voz y que esa voz se debe escuchar. Carlos, te saludo. De verdad apreciamos tu energía y tu liderato en el Consejo Municipal. Es bueno ver la juventud asumiendo el liderazgo en esta ciudad. Y de nuevo, José, todos que han participado esta noche, le agradezco su presencia, le deseamos lo mejor. Esta es su casa. Si hay alguien que tiene alguna pregunta acerca de este colegio, de esta escuela, de esta planta, por favor, dirijan su pregunta a alguno de nuestros estudiantes, nuestros maestros. Esta es su casa. Buenas noches por haber participado y nos vemos pronto. Buenas noches.
I think we should say one thing that we all need to understand. There were people that didn't want this meeting to happen, even in our own community. I want to thank, because if you're going to create institutions like this, this is what they're functioning, so that we can have activities like this. So I want to thank Fernando. I want to thank you, Wanda, Doctora. I want to thank all of the wonderful personnel here, because if you cannot create institutions like this, and then we can gather as a community of people, I think it's a very, very sad. Then what you have done is snuffed out democracy. You haven't allowed people to speak. So thank you, and thank you to everybody that works here at ASPIRA each and every day. Thank you so much.